Have you ever wondered why some people seem impossible to talk to no matter how hard you try? You explain your point clearly, but they just do not get it. You think they are being stubborn, while they think you are being difficult. It feels like you are speaking two completely different languages, even though you both speak the same words. But what if the problem is not what you say, it is how you say it? In Surrounded by Idiots, behavioral expert Thomas Erikson reveals a powerful truth: most misunderstandings do not come from stupidity, but from different communication styles. He divides human behavior into 4 color types: red, yellow, green, and blue, each with unique ways of thinking, deciding, and responding. When you learn to read these colors, you stop clashing with people and start connecting with them. Because the real secret of influence is not about being smarter, it is about understanding others better. Chapter 1. Communication happens on the listener's terms. Imagine you are explaining something important, maybe at work, maybe to a friend, and the person in front of you just stares blankly. You repeat yourself, slow down your words, even raise your tone a little. Still nothing. You feel unheard. Frustration builds. You think, why can they not just understand what I mean? But here is the truth Thomas Erikson begins with: communication is never about what you say, it is about what the other person hears. Erikson challenges the biggest myth in human interaction, the idea that if you are clear enough, people will automatically understand you. He says communication is not symmetrical. It always happens on the listener's terms. This means that your success as a communicator depends on your ability to adapt your message to the other person's style. For example, a direct, goal-oriented person might appreciate bluntness and results, but say those same words to a sensitive, harmony-seeking individual and you will instantly sound harsh or rude. The same message can inspire one person and offend another. The difference lies not in the words, but in how those words are received. Erikson explains that every human filters information through their own preferences, emotions, and needs. You may think you are being logical, but the listener might be processing emotionally. You might focus on details, but they might focus on relationships. That is why understanding who you are talking to matters far more than perfecting what you are saying. He urges you to imagine every conversation as crossing a bridge. You can either wait for the other person to come to your side, or you can walk across to meet them where they are. The second approach, he says, is what makes true communication possible. So the next time you think someone is not listening, pause and ask yourself, are you speaking your language or theirs? Because until you start communicating on their terms, you will always be misunderstood. But how do you actually understand what their language is, and why do people behave so differently in the first place? Chapter 2 reveals the surprising psychology behind our differences and why we are the way we are. Chapter 2. Why are we the way we are? Have you ever looked at someone's reaction and thought, why would anyone behave like that? You see one person explode in anger over a tiny mistake, while another quietly avoids all confrontation. A third talks endlessly, while a fourth hides in silence. Thomas Erikson asks a bold question: are these random differences, or are we wired in patterns we simply fail to see? In this chapter, Erikson dives deep into human behavior psychology. He explains that our personalities are not random moods, but predictable patterns shaped by biology, environment, and experience. The challenge, he says, is that we often judge others through our own lens. If you are fast-paced, you think slow people are lazy. If you are detail-oriented, you think flexible people are careless. But in reality, every behavior has a reason, and every person believes their way is the normal one. Erikson introduces the foundation of his color model. Human behavior can be understood by recognizing key patterns that repeat in all of us. These colors are not about intelligence or morality, they are simply different ways of processing the world. He insists that by understanding these differences, we stop labeling others as idiots and start seeing them as different versions of human logic. He reminds us that personality is like an operating system. Some people run reduce, fast and competitive. Others run bluios, precise and cautious. You cannot expect them to react the same way to the same input. They are running different codes. Once you understand that every person's behavior has a reason, you stop asking what is wrong with them and start asking what drives them. But how do you actually identify these drives and patterns? Chapter 3 introduces the system, the 4 colors that decode every type of human behavior. Chapter 3, an introduction to the system. Picture walking into a room and instantly understanding why one person dominates the conversation, another cracks jokes non-stop, one stays quietly observant, and another keeps checking the facts. What if you could decode everyone's personality within minutes, not to judge them, but to communicate on their wavelength? Erikson introduces the heart of his framework, the 4-color behavior system. It is based on observable communication styles, each linked to a color for clarity and simplicity. Red represents dominance, the action takers, leaders, and decision makers. Yellow stands for inspiration, the enthusiastic, social, and creative. Green symbolizes stability, the patient, loyal, and supportive. Blue reflects analysis, the cautious, precise, and detail-oriented thinkers. He explains that everyone has a blend of these traits, but 1 or 2 tend to dominate. This system is not about labeling people, but about understanding and adapting. When you recognize a person's dominant color, you can tailor your communication, speak their emotional language, match their pace, and build genuine connection. He also emphasizes there are no good or bad colors. Each one contributes something vital to society. Reds drive progress, yellows spark creativity, greens bring harmony, and blues ensure accuracy. Now that you know the colors, the real question is, what do they look like in real life? How do you recognize a red when you meet one, and what happens if you clash with them? Chapter 4 takes you inside the fiery world of red behavior, the color of power, dominance, and relentless drive. Chapter 4, Red behavior. Have you ever met someone who walks into a room and instantly takes charge? Their voice cuts through the noise, their confidence fills the space, and they never seem to doubt a decision. You may admire them or find them intimidating. That person, Erikson says, is most likely a red. Red personalities are driven by one-word results. They are decisive, bold, and assertive. To them, hesitation feels like weakness and small talk feels like a waste of time. They move fast, speak directly, and expect others to keep up. Reds often rise to leadership because they love control and believe success is achieved through action. However, this strength can also be their weakness. Their directness may come across as aggression. Their confidence can sound like arrogance. Erikson warns that Reds can unintentionally hurt others with their tone, not because they mean harm, but because they prioritize efficiency over emotion. When communicating with Reds, Erikson advises, be clear, be concise, and get to the point. They respect strength and lose patience with over-explaining. If you appear indecisive, you lose their respect. But if you show competence and clarity, they will value you deeply. Reds are the engines of progress, but even engines can overheat if not managed carefully. Red energy drives results, but not everyone thrives under that intensity. Some people lead with enthusiasm and charm instead of control. So what happens when the person you meet is not fiery, but full of sunshine and ideas? Chapter 5 introduces the world of yellow behavior, the color of optimism, creativity, and charisma. Chapter 5. Yellow behavior. You know that one person who lights up every room they walk into. The one who tells stories, laughs loudly, and somehow makes everyone feel included. They are spontaneous, energetic, and full of ideas. You might love their energy or find it exhausting. That is the yellow personality, the emotional sunshine of the behavioral spectrum. Yellow types are natural-born communicators. They live for connection, creativity, and excitement. To them, life is one big adventure and people are the playground. They are excellent motivators, often turning dull meetings into bursts of laughter and brainstorming. But Erikson cautions behind the charm lies a struggle. Yellows can be impulsive, easily distracted, and allergic to routine. Their enthusiasm burns bright but fades fast when things get repetitive or overly structured. They dream big but often lose focus halfway through execution. Still, their social intelligence is their superpower. They can turn strangers into allies and conflicts into collaboration simply through their energy. To communicate effectively with a yellow, Erikson says, you must match their positivity, listen to their ideas, and avoid crushing their creativity with excessive criticism. Yellows thrive on appreciation and freedom when you give them both. They reward you with loyalty and inspiration. But what happens when a yellow's explosive energy meets someone who prefers calm, patience, and routine? Two opposite worlds collide. One thrives on excitement, the other on peace. Chapter 6 reveals the quiet power of green behavior, the color of balance, empathy, and stability. Chapter 6, Green behavior. Think about the person who never starts an argument, who listens patiently, and who somehow keeps the peace even when tensions rise. They rarely seek the spotlight, yet everyone feels calmer when they are around. They are not loud, not flashy, but quietly dependable. That is the green personality, the soul of stability in a chaotic world. Thomas Erikson describes green as the most common personality type and perhaps the most misunderstood. Greens are the glue that holds teams, families, and friendships together. They value harmony, loyalty, and routine. Change unsettles them, conflict drains them, and surprises make them nervous. But do not mistake their calmness for weakness. Their strength lies in consistency and empathy. A green person listens when no one else does. They are patient when others rush. They value relationships more than ambition, and they often sacrifice their own needs to keep others comfortable. Erikson points out that greens can be incredibly supportive, but they also struggle with saying no. Their desire to please can trap them in exhaustion or indecision. To communicate with greens, Erikson advises, never rush them. Give them time to process, reassure them of stability, and show genuine appreciation. They do not respond to aggression, but to kindness and clarity. In a world full of noise, greens remind us that silence can also speak volumes. But while greens thrive on patience and calm, there is another type that thrives on precision, logic, and control. If greens feel with their hearts, this next group thinks with a calculator. Chapter 7 introduces blue behavior, the world of order, perfection, and discipline. Chapter 7. Blue behavior. You have probably met someone who double-checks every fact, corrects your grammar, and insists on following the rules to the letter. To them, being right is not arrogance, it is integrity. They believe that truth and order protect the world from chaos. Meet the blue personality, the perfectionist of the behavioral spectrum. Erikson paints blues as meticulous, analytical, and dependable. They crave structure and despise surprises. Facts are their comfort zone. Emotions, their greatest puzzle. When others speak in generalities, blues want proof. When others act on impulse, blues demand data. Their world runs on clarity, precision, and logic. At their best, blues bring stability and excellence. They notice details others overlook, prevent costly mistakes, and raise standards for everyone. But their strength can also isolate them. Because they are so focused on doing things right, they can come across as rigid or overly critical. They often struggle with delegation because they trust systems more than people. Erikson's advice for dealing with a blue is simple yet crucial. Be prepared. Bring facts, not feelings. Respect their need for precision. If you exaggerate or bluff, they will lose trust instantly. Once you earn their confidence, however, a blue becomes one of the most loyal and reliable allies you could ever have. Now that all four colors are revealed, red, yellow, green, and blue, you might wonder, is one better than the others? Can a person be a perfect blend, or are we doomed to clash forever? Chapter 8 explores the truth behind our imperfections and why no one is completely perfect. Chapter 8: No one is completely perfect. We love to believe that self-awareness will make us flawless, that once we know our color type, we can master every situation. But Thomas Erikson delivers a sobering truth. Awareness does not equal perfection. You can know your weaknesses and still fall right into them, because being human means being beautifully flawed in this chapter. Erikson explains that each color has strengths but also blind spots. Reds act before they think, yellows promise more than they can deliver. Greens avoid confrontation even when it matters. Blues overanalyze until opportunities disappear. He emphasizes that these flaws are not failures, they are trade-offs. Every strength carries a shadow. The key is not to erase your weaknesses, but to balance them. A red can learn patience from a green. A yellow can gain structure from a blue. Growth, he says, comes from borrowing strengths from other colors, not denying your own. Erikson also warns against using the color model as a weapon, like saying, "I am red, deal with it." The system is meant to bridge differences, not justify them. True mastery is when you understand your tendencies and consciously adjust them for the benefit of others. Knowing your flaws is one thing, changing them is another. Awareness opens the door, but growth demands effort. So how do you actually transform old habits and learn new ways of behaving? Chapter 9 reveals the psychology of learning new things and why real change starts with small, intentional steps. Chapter 9: Learning New Things. Why is it so easy to understand what needs to change, yet so hard to actually do it? You read books, watch motivational videos, promise to start tomorrow, but old habits return like gravity. Thomas Erikson says the reason is simple: your brain resists change like a body resists pain. In this chapter, Erikson explores how our behavioral colors influence the way we learn and adapt. Reds want fast results and lose interest if progress feels slow. Yellows jump in with excitement but get distracted halfway. Greens fear the discomfort of new routines. Blues overthink every step until they paralyze themselves with doubt. To break this cycle, Erikson introduces the principle of conscious effort through discomfort. Real learning begins when you are willing to stay uncomfortable long enough for new habits to stick. It is not about instant success, it is about repetition, patience, and reflection. He also emphasizes the importance of feedback. Reds need reminders to slow down. Yellows need accountability. Greens need encouragement. Blues need assurance that mistakes are part of the process. By recognizing how each color learns, you can create an environment where growth feels possible, not threatening. Learning, Erikson reminds us, is not about becoming someone else, it is about becoming a more balanced version of yourself. But there is one powerful form of communication that speaks louder than words: your body. The way you move, stand, and gesture can reveal your color type faster than any test. Chapter 10 uncovers the hidden language of movement and why how you move matters more than you think. Chapter 10: Body language. Why how you move matters. You can say all the right words, but your body might be saying something completely different. Ever noticed how someone's posture, tone, or even silence can change an entire conversation? Thomas Erikson reminds us people do not just listen to your words, they read your movements. In this chapter, Erikson dives into the psychology of nonverbal communication. He explains that over 70% of communication happens through tone, gestures, and body language, not actual words. Each color type expresses themselves physically in unique ways. Reds move fast, take up space, and use strong, sharp gestures. Yellows are expressive, their eyes light up, their hands move as if they are painting the air. Greens keep their movements calm and minimal, preferring steady gestures that comfort others. Blues are reserved, precise, and often avoid unnecessary motion. They control their presence. Erikson notes that mismatched body language causes instant distrust. For example, a blue who fakes yellow enthusiasm will seem unnatural. The secret is not to imitate others, but to align your body language with your true color while respecting theirs. He also adds that you can read a person's color before they speak. A firm handshake, steady eye contact, or restless energy often reveals their behavioral style. Once you learn this, conversations feel less like battles and more like dances where both people understand the rhythm. But theory means nothing without real-life practice. How does this knowledge actually play out in a normal social situation? Like a company party full of clashing personalities. Chapter 11 gives a real-world example, a company party where every color comes to life. Chapter 11, a real-life example, the company party. It is Friday night. The office lights dim, the music starts, and the company party begins. Within minutes, every type of personality steps onto the social stage, some to shine, some to hide, and some to control. Erikson uses this party as a mirror of human behavior, where every color reveals itself in full. At the buffet table, reds are already in charge, organizing the group, deciding where to sit, and subtly competing over achievements. They talk loudly, move with confidence, and constantly check their watches because they hate wasting time. Across the room, yellows are the life of the party. They are telling stories, cracking jokes, and making new friends with people they met 10 seconds ago. They thrive on energy and laughter. Meanwhile, greens stick with familiar faces, chatting quietly in a corner. They observe more than they speak, offering polite smiles and steady presence. For them, comfort is everything, not the spotlight. And in the background, blues analyze everything from the music volume to the food arrangement. They are polite but reserved, avoiding chaos, ensuring that everything makes logical sense. Erikson uses this vivid scene to show that every group, team, or gathering is a blend of colors. Once you recognize who is who, social tension becomes predictable and even manageable. Instead of judging others, you begin to understand them. So if people are so different, how do you find the right way to interact with each of them? Is it possible to speak every language without losing your own voice? Chapter 12 reveals the key to emotional intelligence, adaptation. Chapter 12, Adaptation. If communication is an art, then adaptation is the brush that paints connection. Thomas Erikson says that success in life depends less on who you are and more on how well you adjust to others. The question is, can you change your approach without changing your identity? Adaptation, Erikson explains, is not pretending or faking. It is empathy in motion. It is about tuning into someone else's wavelength so your message can actually be heard. Reds must learn patience with greens. Yellows must respect blues' need for details. Blues must loosen up around yellows, and greens must speak up when faced with strong reds. This mutual adjustment transforms communication from friction to flow. The more flexible you are, the more influence you gain. Erikson calls it situational intelligence, knowing what to amplify and what to soften depending on who is in front of you. He warns, however, that adaptation must never turn into self-erasure. You do not need to become the other person. You just need to understand them. The power lies in awareness, not imitation. But what about moments when communication is not about bonding but about breaking bad news? How do you stay honest without destroying someone's trust? Chapter 13 reveals how to deliver really bad news and why empathy is your strongest shield. Chapter 13, How to deliver really bad news. No one likes being the messenger of pain, telling someone they failed, lost, or disappointed. But as Erikson says, true leadership is tested not when things go well, but when truth hurts. How do you tell hard truths without crushing the listener? Erikson explains that each color receives bad news differently, and understanding that difference is crucial. Reds prefer honesty, be direct, brief, and specific. They respect courage and clarity, even in disappointment. Yellows need empathy, cushion the truth with encouragement. Show them the future still holds opportunity. Greens value reassurance, they fear conflict, so speak calmly, give them time to process, and avoid harsh tones. Blues seek precision, they want details, explanations, and fairness. Do not sugarcoat. Be transparent. The secret, he says, is not the words themselves, but the emotional delivery. When you communicate bad news in the listener's emotional language, it turns from a wound into wisdom. Erikson reminds us that compassion is not weakness, it is precision in emotional timing. Delivering hard truths is not about being nice. It is about being human. But if communication is this complex, how do we ever find harmony? Why do some people just click instantly while others clash endlessly? Chapter 14 uncovers the chemistry of connection, who gets along and why it works. Chapter 14, who gets along and why it works. You have probably noticed it. Some people fit together effortlessly, while others collide like fire and gasoline. Erikson says that compatibility has little to do with luck and everything to do with understanding human wiring. He explains that harmony arises when complementary colors meet. For example, reds and yellows often form strong teams. One drives action, the other brings creativity. Greens and blues connect through patience and shared stability. But when opposites clash like red and blue, tension can explode. One seeks speed, the other demands perfection. Still, Erikson insists that every color can get along when mutual respect exists. The key is awareness, knowing what triggers each type and avoiding unnecessary friction. He compares relationships to gears in a machine. When the teeth align, motion is smooth. When they grind, the machine still works, but with friction and wear. The same goes for people. Understanding alignment keeps the energy flowing strong. Relationships, whether professional or personal, do not come from similarity, they come from understanding difference. But what happens when communication is not spoken, but written, stripped of tone, gesture, and expression? How do our colors translate on paper? Chapter 15 reveals how personality shapes written communication and why emails and texts can cause chaos. Chapter 15. Written communication and email can start a war. A text can end a friendship. You type carefully, press send, and then watch the dominoes fall. Why does something so small cause such big consequences? Thomas Erikson says that when voice, tone, and body language vanish, our colors show up more brutally on the page. Erikson explains that written communication strips away the emotional scaffolding that spoken words carry. Without tone, a red bluntness may read as rudeness, a yellow joke may read as frivolity, a green caution may read as reluctance, and a blue correction may read as coldness. In short, text amplifies misunderstanding. He lays out practical rules for each color. If you write to a red, be concise, state the action and deadline, and avoid filler. They want the outcome. For a yellow, add warmth, acknowledge the idea, and leave room for collaboration. They want enthusiasm. When drafting for a green, be reassuring, clear about stability, and allow time for response. They want safety. With a blue, provide facts, references, and logical structure. They want accuracy. Erikson also emphasizes formatting as a form of tone. Bullet points, subject lines, and clear calls to action reduce ambiguity. Emojis are not neutral. They are votes of personality. The same sentence can be read 10 different ways. The remedy is purposeful design. Write the message as you would speak it to that person, then remove any elements that could be misread. Erikson gives specific templates for common situations: a short request to a red, a motivating invite to a yellow, a reassuring update to a green, and a detailed report for a blue. He stresses proofreading for tone, not only grammar. The goal is not to fake who you are, but to make your intention unmistakable. If the written word causes so many pitfalls, how do you handle the explosive moments that follow the anger, the slights, the misread intentions? The next chapters tackle what pushes people over the edge and how to manage those emotional eruptions. Chapter 16 begins the dive into triggers: what makes each color as mad as hell. Chapter 16, what makes us as mad as hell? Why do certain people push our buttons so easily while others never seem to bother us? You can stay calm through chaos, but one careless comment from the wrong person can send your emotions into overdrive. The truth is, anger is rarely about the situation itself. It is about how we perceive the person who triggered it. Thomas Erikson explains that every color type has specific behaviors that drive the others crazy. Reds lose their temper when others waste time or avoid decisions. Yellows feel crushed when people reject their enthusiasm or creativity. Greens hate conflict and feel attacked when someone is too intense. Blues get frustrated when others ignore logic or act carelessly. It is not about malice, it is about misunderstanding. Once you see what triggers each color, you can diffuse tension before it explodes. You stop reacting and start responding with understanding. But if our emotions can flare up so easily, how did these personality patterns form in the first place? To answer that, we need to take a brief trip through time. And history reveals more than you might expect. Chapter 17. What makes us as mad as hell? Continuation. Imagine two people from completely different centuries meeting face to face, one shaped by war and survival, the other by comfort and technology. Would they understand each other? Probably not, but they would share the same instinctive reactions shaped by evolution itself. Erikson uses this chapter to dive deeper into why these temperaments exist. Our ancestors developed different traits to survive. The Reds took action in emergencies, the Yellows inspired and united tribes, the Greens provided stability, and the Blues analyzed danger. These survival instincts became hardwired into our psychology. So when someone's behavior irritates you, remember it is not new. You are witnessing thousands of years of evolution colliding with modern life. But what does history say about how these temperaments shaped leaders, societies, and revolutions? The next chapter paints that picture vividly. Chapter 18. A short reflection through history. What if the rise and fall of empires could be traced back to personality colors? Imagine a world where the Reds built kingdoms, the Yellows spread culture, the Greens kept peace, and the Blues designed systems that lasted centuries. Erikson walks through history showing that leaders like Julius Caesar or Napoleon embodied the red type: bold, commanding, and decisive. Innovators like Leonardo da Vinci and Steve Jobs channeled yellow energy, visionary and disruptive. Green personalities quietly sustained families, communities, and stability. Meanwhile, blue minds built laws, technologies, and structures that formed civilizations. It is a fascinating reminder that progress happens when these colors balance each other. When one dominates, chaos follows. So if these personality forces have been shaping humanity for centuries, how do they show up in our own daily lives? The next chapter brings history back to the present through real people, real conversations, and real lessons. Chapter 19. Voices from real life. Theory is powerful, but stories are unforgettable. What happens when real people share how understanding the four colors changed their marriages, friendships, and workplaces? Erikson shares personal stories and testimonies from readers, managers, and employees who once thought they were surrounded by idiots. One manager discovered that her lazy employee was actually green, calm, cautious, and overthinking every decision. A father realized his rebellious son was simply red, craving independence, not disobedience. These stories prove one thing: when you see people's colors clearly, judgment fades and empathy grows. You stop labeling and start listening. But before you claim you have mastered the colors, Erikson challenges you to test yourself. The next chapter is not just a summary, it is a mirror. Chapter 20, a quick little quiz too. See what you have learned. Are you really as self-aware as you think? Most people believe they understand themselves until they are forced to choose between honesty and ego. In this fun yet revealing chapter, Erikson presents a quiz that helps you identify your dominant color type. It is not about labeling yourself but learning your strengths and blind spots. The quiz forces you to reflect on how you react under pressure, how you handle conflict, and how you make decisions. You may find that you are not purely one color. You are a blend, shaped by context and emotion, and the more you learn, the easier it becomes to adapt to others. But quizzes and theories mean nothing until tested in the chaos of real life. That is exactly what the final chapter is about, when the lessons meet reality. Chapter 21. A final example from everyday life. Imagine navigating a regular day at the office: meetings, emails, conflicts, and casual chats. One wrong word, one misread gesture, and chaos erupts. But what if you could see the hidden color patterns behind every interaction? Erikson illustrates with a final real-life example where all four colors converge in a single scenario. A red boss demands results, a yellow colleague proposes a wild idea, a green teammate fears change, and a blue analyst questions every detail. At first, the room feels tense and uncoordinated, but once each person adapts, reds temper their force, yellows organize their energy, greens speak up, and blues loosen their rigidity, the meeting transforms. Productivity, creativity, and harmony emerge simultaneously. This chapter shows that theory meets reality. Understanding colors does not remove challenges, but it equips you to navigate them successfully. Misunderstandings fade when adaptation and empathy take the lead. Behavioral differences are not obstacles, they are maps. Once you learn to read them, every interaction becomes a chance for connection, influence, and growth. Conclusion: humans are not idiots. They are different, complex, and beautifully imperfect. Thomas Erikson. Surrounded by Idiots teaches us that the secret to influence, harmony, and success is not changing others, but understanding them. By recognizing the four colors red, yellow, green, and blue, you gain a toolkit to decode motives, communicate effectively, and prevent conflict before it starts. Your relationships, career, and personal growth all improve when you stop judging and start adapting. Remember, empathy, awareness, and adaptability are the real superpowers. Every person you meet can teach you something if you take the time to read their signals, both spoken and unspoken. Now that you know the secret to understanding anyone, what color do you think dominates your life? Comment below your color and one insight you will apply today. If you want more powerful book insights like this, subscribe and hit the bell. Do not miss the next life-changing summary.